feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the DaneMoore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks coming in Monday morning. It's February 9th after the Wolves had a losing weekend at home with losses to the Pelicans on Friday night and the Clippers on Sunday afternoon. And coming up on today's show, I'll be joined by Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press to discuss the Wolves' latest existential crisis, which started with a low-effort performance against the 13-30 Pelicans on Friday night, which led to some harsh comments from Rudy Gobert after the game, not only calling out his teammates' lack of effort, but comments on how it's on the coaching staff to enforce accountability if the players aren't being accountable to playing with effort themselves. We'll play that clip when Jace joins us. But that's where we're going to start this episode because I think that story kind of overshadowed the whole weekend. But there was another story. Ayo Dosunmu is on the Timberwolves now, made his Wolves debut on Sunday afternoon. So we'll talk about Ayo and some other specifics from the loss to the Pelicans and the Clippers. But before we bring Jace in, want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company and that we will be doing a live show at Falling Knife this Friday, February 13th at 7 p.m. It'll be myself and Britt Robson. How it works, shows at 7 o'clock. We do like a happy hour at 6 where we'll be hanging out, setting up, and answer questions, whatever. We'll all just be there at 6 o'clock. I would recommend getting there at 6 because we're going to be inside. If you come to these before in like the spring or the summer, we're outdoors and there's a lot more space. But if it's important to you to get a seat, come at 6, come earlier. Just spend the Friday night hanging out with us. It's All-Star Weekend, the Rising Stars game, the Celebrity game. That'll all be on the TVs in Falling Knife there. And we'll be hanging out talking about the Wolves wherever they're at come Friday. But if you've never come to one of our live shows before, hopefully a Friday night over All-Star break here works for you. Again, February 13th, 7 p.m. Live show. And look forward to seeing you there. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. Let's do a podcast. Jace Frederick coming up next. All right, it's Monday morning, so we're joined by Jace to talk about what accountability means to you. Hi, Jace. How are you?
Awesome, man. Happy start of the NBA season, I think, for 50% of fans.
Wow.
Day after the Super Bowl. Not on this podcast. I'm aware of that. I know we're all NBA season-long people over here, but I do always find these days of like people being like, so what's going on in the NBA? And for the Wolves, it ain't good. But here we go.
Yeah, it is the worst it's felt. I think I would say that. I mean, specifically related to Finch, and we'll get into that a little bit today. And that is where I want to start was with Rudy's comments after the game in the locker room. You asked him the first question after the game about how they played in that game. It wasn't really like he was ready to unload a clip, and he said, there's just no effort. We've seen that many, many times this year. Last few years since I've been here, we always know it's coming. And when it comes, there's no sense of urgency, no accountability. So I think at some point, if the players don't have accountability, someone else got to have accountability for the players. Did you think in that moment he was talking about Finch? I'll play the clip afterwards, but is that where you were thinking?
No, and I know the clip we're going to get into here, and it's even then, I mean, we'll talk a lot more about this, but as we walked away, I wasn't like, oh, wow, calling out Finch. Like, that was not my interpretation of it at all. Looking back, I can see how there was probably some to it of like, are you going to do something? But I was totally like, oh, he's calling out Aunt Julius. Like that was my 1000%. Yes. Yeah, that was all I got from it.
All right, let me just play that, and then we can pick it apart a little bit. This is after the game on Friday night, the loss to the Pelicans.
When you talk about accountability, as you did in the first question, are you talking about accountability in yourselves, accountability amongst yourselves, the coaching staff? I mean,
it starts with ourselves, but it seems like we don't have that. So I think at some point, just from the coaches, from the coaches, I think it's not an easy position for a coach to take guys out of the game, especially when like it's not something that you want to do. But I think if the players don't show any effort, at some point we gotta. No matter how talented we are as a team, if we don't have that, we just can't be a winning team. So, it starts with me. Like if I'm not showing effort, bench, they'll take me out of the game. And everybody else got to follow. Our best players, our leaders. Like if you don't show any effort, you just no matter if you score 50, like we're just not gonna win. So, at some point, we're not mature enough to have that accountability ourselves. That might be the solution. And I guarantee you that when we come back on the court, we show effort.
So I was a bit surprised afterwards, the response to that. I'm not even saying it's wrong if it's people's opinion on, to have frustration with Finch in the accountability category. I think that's part of this conversation. But I think the conversation starts with who was that pointed at, and what was Rudy's motivation, and what was he trying to achieve by saying that? Because he knew he wanted to say that. And yeah, like you said, sorry, before I played the clip, I very much took it as a direct, point at Ant and Julius, especially with the doesn't matter if you score 50 sort of line.
Who is he talking about? Yeah.
Mike Conley.
Yeah. He's like, that's why he's not here right now.
He's trying to score too much. Go.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I took it. It was those two guys, and our two leading scorers. Like, if you don't show effort, basically almost like calling for coaches, just please bench them or something, because we've tried this whole, hey, we got to be better on this end, we got to be better on this end. We do the film sessions, all that stuff, and it doesn't seem to matter. That's how I was interpreting all of it. Right. And yes, almost hey, maybe we do have to even go to different extremes, because internally there's just not that accountability there. So we need to do even more external stuff. And I didn't view that as what are the coaches doing, bench him. I think he was we might have to do this. That's how I took it. We got to do that's extreme, and you don't want anybody to have to do that. But look at what's happening here. We're not going to win if we keep doing this. That was how I took all of it in the moment, just in that room, listening to him, and even listening back. And it wasn't until I saw everything else on social media of oh, people are just taking this as a shot at Chris Finch and the coaching staff. Oh, okay. I guess I could see how you get there, and said maybe we're wrong, but that's how I read it for sure, and that's still how I feel about it as I watch it back. Of these two guys, how are we going to change this? And yeah, that's still kind of where I stand on where I think he was most pointing the finger.
I do too, but it did, and seeing the reaction and and thinking about just the whole concept of accountability in professional sports, it did open up it does open up an interesting sort of thought bubble of chicken or egg here.
Right.
Is it, in basketball, is it a player's fault for not being accountable, or is it the responsibility of the coach to hold them accountable? And I was thinking about that, and I start going through let's start with it being on the coach, and it goes that way. I start with the player, but then I go back to, I think I think Rudy was saying both. I think he was saying that it is on the player to be accountable, and if they aren't, it's on the coach to have accountability, to hold that player accountable, to bring that, to bring that effort and do those sort of things. To which, that's kind of how I thought Finch was going to respond to this when he was asked about it the next day. But he did take a different, I don't have the clip, I wasn't at practice, but this is from Chris Hine, who was there and asked Finch about it on Saturday morning at practice. And Finch said, anybody who knows how we do things knows there's a high degree of accountability. Secondly, I handle all my conversations with ourselves in-house. Disappointing, he felt the need to go outside. Nonetheless, that's been addressed already today. There's never been a team who's won anything meaningful that has substituted their way there. New variable, that's
yep.
I don't think I expected that answer to be the way that he took that, or that he would respond to it. And there's some interesting pieces in there about the not substituting your way to a championship, or to winning, which I understand too. But yeah, I don't know. How did you feel about the rebound of what Finch said?
I think that to me was like, oh, okay, he took it as criticism of him, and which rarely comes. There have hardly ever been like veiled public shots at him from players. So if he took that one from Rudy as one, we saw how he responded to it. Not in kind. Yeah, I was surprised too. And I would say, like, you talk about the thing of accountability, and that's true. And we've talked about that on this podcast of like, oh yeah, all these film sessions, these halftime yelling, all this stuff. And a lot of times that is what gets the guys back in gear. But man, like, I get it from Rudy's perspective too of, yeah, okay, we do that a lot and it works for like a half or a game and then that's it. So like, oh, we hold them accountable, and it doesn't, and this year it has not led to any long-term thing. It's not been like, oh, wow, like they have clearly turned a corner. So like, I can understand if Rudy being like, yeah, we do all this stuff and it doesn't work. So what else are we going to do? What's next? And I think from Rudy's perspective, there's probably a little bit of who is the one player who does get benched at the ends of games, like the one high impact player who gets benched.
Him.
It's Rudy. And it is what we've talked about since the beginning of the year and dating back to last year's playoffs is this team, Chris Finch, everybody, the fix is always to go more offense. It always is. If something's going wrong, it's like, oh, we're down by 8, got to get more offense out there. And we saw that in the playoffs. OKC, whatever. We see that in games all the time now. Like, Rudy's struggling a little bit. Get him out of here. Let's go for more offense. We're not getting stops anyway. And meanwhile, then on the other end, there's never like a Ant isn't getting stops. Julius isn't getting stops. Get him out of the game. That does not happen. And it certainly doesn't happen in the fourth quarters of games. It never happens. So I do understand the whole thing of, oh, we're a defensive team. We have defensive identity, all this stuff. But then nobody is punished in the games while it's all happening to fix it. And instead, it's just like, well, we'll knock this out in film tomorrow, or we'll knock this out after the game. And we're just seeing that it's not long-term results on any of that. And so maybe it is like, hey, you two aren't defending, you're out. These guys are in. I'd rather lose playing defense tonight. And that's not like, that means that we can't win a championship because we subbed you out tonight. Like, there's 82 games. We've seen them throw away a lot of games. It's okay to take one to send a message. So I understand that from Rudy's perspective. And I was a little bit baffled at the response of, yes, Rudy didn't play well either against New Orleans. So maybe it was a bad time to pick a spot. But the message still was valid. I think there was a lot of validity to it. I think there was a lot of, when are our two best players going to play defense instead of tone on that end? Like Ant has said after many key wins, I need to start doing this. I need to start taking the charge on this end. And he does for like one night. And then he drifts back and now I'm not paying attention. So I totally got what Rudy said, and what I was very surprised it was Chris Finch said, but I think it's because he kind of went into defense mode, thinking that Rudy was coming at him. But yeah, I was surprised by that response for sure.
It opens up a whole much bigger story that I think goes back to that first Memphis playoff series where that was where the first like sort of sparks of what about Finch is happening here, lack of timeouts, blowing big leads, all of that. And there's another common denominator in this too. I'm not saying it's not Finch. I'm saying there are two common denominators of what's on the team in that time. It's Finch and what he does well and what he doesn't well that leads to these problems. And it's Ant, who's the other common denominator because he's on that team, and we've seen from him too of like what you just said and admitting as much of not bringing the effort, of losing focus when there's a big lead. Like he has copped to all of these things numerous times, and he's done that since that Memphis series in 2022. And so to me, again, I was spending time thinking about the chicken or the egg here of like, is it the players or is it the coach who needs to do all of it? It's both of them. I mean, Ant at this point, to me, in my opinion, Ant at this point in his career should not be having those same type of lapses that he did in 2022, in 2026. And Finch should have found better, more effective ways to kind of like put a floor on that, in which doesn't let it blow up in the ways that it does so often, has happened so often, even in like 2020, the 6 weeks of 2026 thus far. I think Ant has some flaws in that his ability to have accountability. And I think Finch struggles with the need to do it all of the time. But it's not that he doesn't do it. When I was in Memphis and they, Nas told me in there about, Finch really yelling at him at halftime and after the game they won in Memphis. And my question to him and all the other players was, does this work when Finch yells at you guys? Specifically, does this always work? And Nas was like, yeah, it really does. It does. We know we're messing up. So it's already kind of on our mind, but that brings it home. And when Finch unloads that clip, it does get their attention. Go back to that Phoenix game last year where there was the fiery Finch film session and the players all said that Finch woke up that day choosing violence, and they won that game and it worked. And it's just the question of like, how often should a coach be expected to do that? And then specific to the New Orleans game, it was 70-54 at halftime against the 13-40 or whatever. They're terrible. I think that's what the record. Terrible. Second worst record in the league, New Orleans Pelicans. And the fall apart happened after halftime, So it can be maybe Finch needed more timeouts and maybe he needed to crack the whiteboard over his leg and whatever. I think probably Finch needed to do more there. He just didn't have his normal place where he does it, where he comes in the locker room, yells at everyone for, as Ant said, like calling them out for bullshitting and saying, whenever you're bullshitting, I'm going to call you guys out for bullshitting in these spots. I think specific to the New Orleans game, it happened after halftime. So I don't know where that could have really, really come from Finch.
Yeah. And I agree. And I do question, like, if you do it every game, eventually it's going to fall on deaf ears, right? Like, you do have to pick your spots with all of that. Even the coaches, the fiery ones, can't do it 82 times a season. Like, ideally, you would hope that through your culture and through just like the players' accountability or whatever it wants to be, like that internal drive, it's going to sustain longer, or they're just going to need the occasional, like, hey, let's get going here, guys, to get back on track. But this one, it's like the second they look back, they're like, is coach not looking? And then they run away, like run off the path, like, nice, got away with it. That's what it feels like. And I will say what was interesting, even after this Clippers game, well, I don't know if Finch's comments again on Saturday were like defending himself, or if he was trying to take a chance to like defend Ant and Julius of like, hey, we don't pile onto these guys here. Like, if I was him, then I'd be pretty disappointed in the response I got from that, because those two guys, again, were not great yesterday. But also, just listening to him talk yesterday, Finch, and he just goes post game and he goes up there and he's like, yeah, positivity. And yeah, offensively, we need to get better at this and this and all of that. That so much reminded me of the tone that he was taking at the beginning of last season when everything was really off the rails. And I do think he reverts to that tone when he's not confident in the group of like, I don't know what we got here. I don't know where this is going. I don't know where their headspace is at. I don't know what they can handle, like tough criticism right now. And it wasn't until they kind of started to turn the corner last year where they would like win a game sloppily and he'd be like, that wasn't good enough. Right. So I thought it was pretty revealing that after a really bad loss, a really bad performance, like that was pretty hideous yesterday. And it's, another loss. They've lost 3 bad games in the last week here. It took like a pretty sensational rally from Ant in the fourth to win any game this last week. They're playing really bad basketball right now. And he decided to go out. Let's positive. Let's be positive here, because I think he's not sure about like what this group, like what is going on here with these guys? Like, where are we at mentally? It looks like it just feels like they're falling apart. And that's why the All-Star break couldn't have been more perfectly timed for this team, because even if it goes off the rails, it's 2 more games, and then it really is a hard reset for everybody as you head into All-Star. But yeah, I don't think he loves where they're at. And I think when he's so unconfident in it that he just goes, got to stay positive. I think he maybe doesn't know the answer right now. And that's okay because of where they are at in the season and who knows how you come out of the break. That kind of defines you more. But I think they're pretty on, like, they seem like they're sick of each other. They seem like they're not enjoying playing with each other. They seem like there's no synergy right now, and that's affecting both ends of the court pretty clearly. And I you talk accountability, all that stuff. Like Rudy's very clearly frustrated. Players, some guys look like they're just not into it. Yeah, they're in a bad spot. This is easily even the wins. Like Dante's like, oh, we responded from a 5-game losing streak. It's like, yeah, against a bunch of skeleton squads. I mean, literally, we talked about it. 3+ rotation guys out of all of those lineups. These weren't like, oh my God, we went toe to toe with these teams, So like great response, I guess, against these like half rosters. But this has been a terrible stretch of basketball since early January.
Dude, it's been a terrible stretch since they started talking about needing the All-Star break, which I don't remember if it was you or whatever. I was like, they are talking about needing the All-Star break way too early. I get the need for the All-Star break. I do get like the fatigue and that's real. You can see that in there. You do see it around this time every year and with every single team. They started talking about that like a few weeks ago. And I was like, yo, there's like 11 games or whatever until this All-Star break. And we know like when you guys are, downshift gears, there's a vulnerability that comes with that. And I could feel that downshift there. And they do lose the 5 games in a row. And right, to some extent bounce back. Obviously they beat the Thunder in there at I think some point after the 5-game losing streak. But it feels like the losing streak happened, the blip of a great game against the Thunder happened, and then something that feels like a losing streak for 5 more games happened because it was the 2 games in Memphis. They won the first one, but that was the one where Finch bitched him out at halftime and after the game. And then they lose the second game in Memphis. So that kind of feels like a 2-game losing streak. They do go to Toronto, who's a good team, who they did beat. But if you didn't watch that game and follow it, it was a game that
they stole.
Ant Heroics took over. Ant stole it.
Right,
they did, and is great. So he has the ability to do that sometimes. We saw in the Pelicans game, he's not gonna hit 85% of his mid-range jump shots in the clutch in perpetuity, and he did it. He missed some shots at the end of that and couldn't just rescue them once the storm had hit. So then that loss happens. And then the loss against the Clippers happened, and it's technically only a 2-game losing streak, and it's technically 2 and 3 in that 5-game stretch. But Dante said it after the game last night. It feels like we've lost 5 in a row here, and we've only lost 2. Like there is something that has seeped into this team that is just heavy. It's all just heavy, and it's fueled by fatigue or whatever. But yeah, it's a little foreign to this group too. 2 seasons ago, never lost more than 2 games in a row, I think,
because the Nuggets one was the Nuggets playoff series was the first time all year they lost 3 games in a row.
Yeah, so this is new, and Ant, I do think in many ways Ant is a good leader, and in like the never too high, never too low sort of thing. It's easier to be a never too high, never too low player or leader when it never gets too low. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
And now it's feeling uncomfortable in the interview sessions with Ant talking about energy and stuff like that. And I could tell he's sick of talking about it. He even said that last night. I'll play that clip. He did not prescribe it to energy last night. Here's Ant.
I feel like we had good energy today. I feel like the offense just wasn't going for it, especially myself. So I have nothing to say about our defense tonight. I think we did a pretty good job tonight. It's just we couldn't score the ball.
And it seemed like you used a couple of dunks. It seemed like you were trying to maybe a little more intentional tonight about putting in, like, injecting energy into the game. Do you see that to be part of, I guess, your role, your responsibility here too?
Yeah, I mean, I try, but sometimes it works, sometimes it don't work. But like I said, tonight I don't think it was a lack of energy thing. I think we just didn't have nothing on the offensive end.
Today's show is brought to you by Factor. When I'm busy, when it's cold outside grocery shopping, and finding time to cook is tough, and that's why in our household, we do Factor every winter, because Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs. So I eat well without the planning or the cooking. These are quality functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats, no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and no refined seed oils. And there is variety, 100 rotating weekly meals to keep things fresh and delicious through winter. Options include high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and ready to eat salads. Always fresh, never frozen, ready in about 2 minutes with no prep and no stress. I really do use Factor, and I think you should try it out too. Head to factormeals.com/DaneMoore50 off and use code DaneMoore50 off to get 50% off your first box and free breakfast for a year. Eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only, varies by plan, 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and with the Wolves playing the Atlanta Hawks this evening, let's do a Prize Picks lineup. I picked 2 players from each team. From the Wolves, I think we get an aggressive Ant tonight, more than 7.5 free throw attempts in this game. And I also think Nas lets it rip, more than 5.5 3-point attempts for him. And then on the Atlanta side of things, give me Jalen Johnson to score more than 23.5 points. I think the Wolves struggle to guard those big, strong fours. And then old friend Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I'm going to say he takes more than 7.5 3-point attempts in this game as well. There's always something going on over at Prize Picks. You could do the daily fantasy lineups. You can go to the teams tab and do point spreads there as well. The Wolves are 6.5-point favorites this evening. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, all you do have to do is put in the promo code Dane. When you sign up, you'll receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code Dane when you create your account. In a vacuum of last night, I kind of see what he's saying, but like to ignore the idea that defense isn't what gets the offense going is like doing very two-dimensional thinking there. When he said in the past, the group has acknowledged in the past, the defense gets the offense going. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't think it was a great defensive performance.
Don't you think it's so mirrored what Chris Finch said post-game that I feel like a lot of times Finch will go in there after the game and give his message, and then he gives us the same thing. So when the players all just heard like, hey, offensively, you guys, like, I didn't mind the defense to start the game. Offensively, we got to do this and this and this. That then it's in their heads, and it's like, defense wasn't that bad. It was the offense. Because that was the message that Finch gave to in his post-game media availability. So I'm guessing it's the message he gave to players. So I'm guessing that's what was in players' heads. And so that's what Ant heard, and that's where I think it came from. But we all know this, like the defense does lead to offense. Like that is what sparks everything. But that's where I took when I heard the Ant things. I'm like, I think that's probably what he just heard from Chris Finch. And sometimes it's nice to just be able to take a break and not say the same thing again. So you can go, okay, let's blame the offense tonight, and that's where I kind of landed on hearing that. But I agree with this. Like their defense is what drives their offense. Their offense in like half court sets when they're playing a bunch of that is not very good because they have a lot of bad habits still on that end of the court when they aren't almost like loosened up or freed up by pace and transition, and which obviously stems entirely from defense. So yeah, I think it always has to start on one end of the court, that end of the court specifically, because even when they do just score a bunch, like it doesn't necessarily lead to wins anyway. But yeah, that's where I landed at with it. But it is just like, I don't know if they were just tired of talking about defense or what. And the defense was okay in the first quarter, and then it fell off a cliff. So maybe that was kind of what the whole thing was in reference to. It is hard to get stops when the other team can play with pace because you can't score. So I see the two-way side of it, but man, like that defensive effort wasn't good enough, and they have to know that.
So I think a bigger question here about defense and effort is what does effort need to look like, for this team? What doesn't it need to look like? What Finch also said in his post-game presser yesterday was that he liked the ball containment defensively. But he also said the off-ball stuff was non-existent. He said the low-man rotations were non-existent there. If you go through, there's a bunch of clips on Twitter. We saw it firsthand. Ant and Julius off-ball, it was a flat-footed performance. And other guys too. It actually wasn't just them. But it was the slap the four defense, I got my guy. It wasn't the surrounding pieces there. And that's what energy needs to look like for this team to win more, is doing the not fun stuff of like being locked in off ball. That for defense, like the defense will get better exponentially the more players that are locked in off ball. That's true everywhere. It starts at the point of attack, the Wolves have enough good point of attack defenders. They have one great one in Jaden to be like, well, sometimes that's going to lack, but that isn't like a fundamental issue with our roster is point of attack defenders, guys guarding the ball. The issues happen off the ball. And so that brings me to, what does the energy not need to look like, right? Like where do you not do it? And I was thinking about Ant after getting big buckets in the game last night, he would then pick up full court. You know, he'd have a nice finish, like finish in the mid-range, get a dunk, and he would be like, you know, whoever's bringing the ball up the floor, I'm turning them full court. I don't think that's the energy that they need from Anthony Edwards, is to pick up a guy 94 feet. They need energy from Ant in the off-ball position there. And if you're picking up full court, you are actually draining your energy more. It's just not a good, if we acknowledge the fact that Ant has a limited amount of gas in the tank, a finite amount, as everyone does, and he's using so much on offense, it does need to some extent be selective. And I think that's the issue here is like, what are you selecting, Ant, to work? Julius, where are you selecting to work here? Because right now it's like close to none, but the times that they select are very obvious, and it's not an efficient, in my opinion, it's not an efficient use of the energy. Like Julius can turn it, he did last night. He turned it on and was playing, you know, locking guys up in an isolation situation for a couple possessions over the course of the game. And that's good. And it was great that he did that against Wemby in that other game. He can do that. Ant can do that. The night to night issue with the defense is those guys don't normally guard the ball. Ant guards the weakest player every single game off ball. And Julius is guarding a big. They're inherently off ball. Julius is maybe in coverage as the big. Their job defensively is to be locked in off ball. Number one. That's number one on the list for them. And that isn't happening because I think they're using energy in not the most opportune positions. And maybe that's on Finch, you know, to like, I'm sure that's on Finch to be like, that is the accountability I think he does need to enforce, of being like, you need to do this. And if it has to come at the expense of that, that's okay. If energy is in fact limited with these guys.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, like that full court stuff from Ant, I think it's like, hey, we're losing. How do I create that one play that could spark things? Like you mentioned, you asked him about it with the dunks. I think he maybe feels like if I pick this guy up full court and steal the ball, that's an igniter. Like he's just looking for like an igniter, you know, like, and so I get it. I get thinking because we've seen it. Like we saw it when Nikhil would do those types of plays, or even Jalen Clark now, like they are big energy things where it's like, oh, okay. Like now the whole thing's alive. So he's thinking, how do I get this going? But I agree with you that the biggest thing is like, hey, from the beginning of the game, be locked in on what you're doing off the ball. And we don't need that other stuff anymore. Right. You know, we don't need to hit that turbo boost where it's like maybe it even helps. And then in the fourth quarter, even if it did help, we might be on E. It's be paying attention to the game plan, paying attention to where you need to be off ball, like know where ball and your guy are at all times. Like be ready for your low man rotation. Like that's the low man rotations have been hideous. Like against when I watch back like the Zion stuff, like yes, in the second half, there were some pretty tentative contests from Rudy at the rim. Zion got going when Rudy wasn't on the court in the first half, and some of the low man stuff, it was like, oh my God, like not even close to thinking about getting there. It was like an uncontested walk to the rim. And that's what got Zion really going. And it's like, that's where defensively, it's like, there's just not enough care in it right now. And yeah, we've all, you know, I think a lot of people probably saw the clip where Ant's just standing flat footed as it's just like, oh, one pass away to Derek Jones and he shoots it. And it's like, basically nobody was over there. And that stuff all matters too. And it can't be just, I'm not in this play. And Julie says the same thing where it's like, I'm not in this play, so I'm not focused at all. Like they're up to, even if you're applying on ball pressure, it is irrelevant if there are just free safety valves all over the court, like to release pressure. That takes away everybody who's on the ball. Yes, obviously, maybe a team wants somebody to initiate their action, and that's what gets them going in their best state. And maybe you can distort it a little bit if you can get the ball out of that guy's hands before they actually get into it. But if you want to be like truly impactful defense where, you know, you're making the other team's life hell, you're forcing turnovers, you're forcing some really bad shots, like end of shot clock stuff because they can't get into anything, you have to also make the release valve passes tough. And that means like you're in good position, and there's nothing easy and free, and like you're in that nice spot where it would take a really good pass to get to your guy, but you're also guarding the back door, all of that stuff. And instead it's just Ant's like, yeah, throw it to my guy. I don't care. Like, you know, like, and that it's not just Ant, like you said, like Julius doing the same thing a lot of guys are. But those two are just the two you're always going to point to. They're the two, like, quote unquote, leaders, best players on the team. And so it's setting a terrible tone, and it is kind of just negating anything you're trying to do on the ball. Like, that's the 2 years ago, we would see like a team, even when they would go around the horn and be like, wow, that was some great offense. The shot was so rushed at the end of it because it's like, dude, this guy's like,
good.
Every time there's somebody coming out like 2 steps away from me, charging at me, but in also a controlled closeout way. And if I get by him, then the low man's right there too. So there's nothing. Like, you feel like you made 8 passes, you swung the ball 3 times. Surely we have something here. And it's like, nope, because this defense has made 10 efforts. The Wolves right now won't make more than one. Like, the on-ball guy is the only guy making the effort. Everybody else is like watching. Like, hope he stops him. NBA players are too good to be like, I'm not even going to let my guy get to the rim. Like, if you're pressing up and applying pressure, they're going to probably get there. And the whole point is that you redirected them a couple times, or you made it a little difficult. You slowed them down. So now it's much easier to beat the low man. But if the low man's not there, it doesn't matter. Right. You know, you're probably going to score just one-on-one in basketball. That's just the way it works.
In the NBA, yeah. Like, that's the thing, is like, great one-on-one defense in the NBA is often a losing venture. I mean, just thinking about that one time where Ant on the cleared out right side was guarding Kawhi, you know, and Ant was locked in and it was moving. And Ant is great at that. Like, he is great in those situations. He's strong as hell. Isn't moved easily. I think has good, like, what's the word I'm looking for? He's good at, like, kind of seeing ahead to what the offensive player is trying to do. Anticipation. God, there's the word. And he was doing that against Kawhi, but Kawhi was Kawhi, and still with strength and length, still got, you know, a double move and got around Ant and finished there. And Kawhi would, you know, Alex Caruso Lou Dort could have been guarding him there too. It's like, that's just going to be a profitable thing for this version of Kawhi Leonard right now. So that's just basketball in the NBA right now. Is defense comes from all the other stuff. It comes from the gap help. It comes from the other things, because no team is good enough to just guard their yard. And that's their defensive identity. Staying home, and I got my guy, you got your guy. We're going to keep them under a point per possession here. That's just the talent offensively is too good. And that would not be good for the energy as well. Like, that's an exhausting style of play. I want to talk about, related to energy and related to Finch's quote, is this idea of the end of the quote was, there's never been a team that's won anything meaningful that has substituted their way there. Now, I know what he's saying there. I know he's going, the expected value of our output, if I substitute out Anthony Edwards, who is not putting in effort right now, and I put in Jalen Clark, who will try, is not, the expected values are not equal there, right? And he believes that with Julius. I mean, there's a better backup to Julius in Naz Reid, but given how important he has made Julius Randle in the offense to this team, he goes, if I take out Julius Randle for fourth quarters, in his mind, he goes, the expected value of that is always going to be lower than, you know, going with the smaller lineup or having Naz out there. Yeah.
Even I think, because Chris Finch is pretty good at like player psyches and stuff. I think he thinks what I'm getting from Julius Randle, not only in this fourth quarter, but what I'm getting with Julius Randle for these next 2 weeks is going to drop off if I do this. I think that matters a lot into all of it, of like, how is this player going to respond to this? And so I think that factors in it. We'll get back into that. But go ahead. I agree.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He has given Julius the bandwidth to have that autonomy. You know, that is on Finch. And I get it. Like, Julius is in this structure is a more important piece than just about anybody on the team. I don't think his what he said, Julius is our most important player, I don't think that is true. But I get, like, the ethos of what he's trying to say. We've given him the longest to-do list on the team, which they gave him. So that he impacted that. But that's on him for giving him that long of a list. I think the pivot is there's got to be a version of Julius that doesn't have as long of a list, right? Like, it can't be if Julius isn't playing well, we're still going to ask him to do all to guard, to rebound, to initiate offense, to all that stuff, that long list that Finch gave there, because there are other options I think are reasonable to look at if you're getting this type of play from Julius Randle that they've been getting for the better part of a month. It's not like Jaden can't play the 4. It's not like now, especially now. Why couldn't you close a game with the starters but minus Randle plus Dosunmu, right? Like, you could do that, slide Jaden up to the 4. If you're looking for more defense, if you're looking for more offense or more shooting, you could do Nas over Julius there. And I just think that Ant and Julius should be put in different tiers. I think with Ant, he's like the 6th best player in the league. You just do kind of need to live with that. But Julius Randle is not the 7th. He's not the 7th best player. So I don't think substituting your way there should be off the table, and it is specific to Julius. It is off the table of substituting your way around however he's playing, however his mood is that day. And that to me is a fair critique of Chris Finch.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. And like I said at the beginning, like, you can say, oh, we can't substitute our way out of things. It's like, well, you can send a message in one game if things are going really bad in a game in March or February or January or whatever, like, it doesn't mean you're like, this guy's not closing for us in May. That doesn't mean that. But also you could set a tone of, and remember, what was it at the beginning of the year that he said? I'm going to close with whoever I think gives us the best chance to win or whatever. Like, that's what I'm doing this year.
Good
and it's
point.
like, it doesn't look like it. Sure doesn't look like it now. Because there's no way that would be the conclusion that you would come to on some of these nights. Like,
no, I think that is selectively applied to Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, and it feels like it. It feels like it. And I think that's where Rudy probably hit a point where he's like, so it's just me. I really do feel like that's where some of his comments came from, of like, well, it's just me here. Like, and I don't know that for sure, but it makes sense, kind of drawing a line of what is like the one switch that they feel like they can flip, at the ends of games. Right. Obviously, it could be like Dante out or something, because we just don't even pay. Like, he's just not quite in this. He's like, it's like in that hybrid of like starter, kind of reserve, starter. But you don't think twice about it when he's not in the game to close, like where you do the other 4. So it really feels like out of those 4, Rudy's the only switch that they feel like they can actually toggle. I think Rudy's like, why is that? Like, I'm a pretty high end player. Like, I'm making a lot of money. Like, I've had a lot of achievements.
Well, and to why when they're down 12 is the only response to come back
score. That's how I feel.
Why? But I mean, I'm just saying,
I disagree.
Mathematically, like, why?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like that the Reed Randall lineup has like a significantly better net rating.
I agree.
They're similar. They're actually, I mean, and the Reed Randall one, like they win. That lineup does win. It outscores its opponents in the regular season, but so do the Rudy lineups too. And it's just, that piece is bizarre to me.
I've always thought maybe it's because they feel like, hey, an Ant heater is the best way to get out of this, and Ant with more spacing is the best way to create an Ant heater. That's been my only thought of
that's a fair
why
one.
they do
that's
that.
A fair one.
But
yeah, or just a heater of the group. You're not going to really get a heater of the group offensively if Rudy's out there, especially with the way his hands are working right now, especially with the way that he shoot under 50% from the free throw line this season. Like, Rudy's not really doing himself any favors to strengthen the argument recently, right? But the macro argument is, if we're down by 12 and Rudy's on the floor, actually, statistically, we do come back and we cut those deficits.
Right.
Whenever Rudy's on the floor. It's a safe bet to do that. And the other lineup is too. It just seems weird to always take the Reed Randall path, because that path, while it might bring you back faster, it also gets you to a 20-point deficit when you're down by 12 quicker, or more likely to go that way too. So
it's always just part of what I feel is mixed messaging from this organization of defense. Like, we draft more for offense, sub more for offense when things get hairy. We do all of these things that actually suggest, like, the words say defense, the actions suggest offense. So that to me has always been well, what one are you? And I think that's why they often do go in and out of these identity things where it's like, yeah, we don't know. They did one year where they played awesome defense and then they hit a West Finals and then it didn't go as great. And they're like, we were too defense there. We got to get more offense. And it's been just like not really picking a lane either way ever since, in my mind.
Today's show is brought to you by Mando, and I've switched it up. I am now using Mando's deodorant. I've been using the solid deodorant stick from Mando that is formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts. I wasn't sure where the difference would really be in changing deodorant, but I've really actually noticed a difference in that this one doesn't wear off like other deodorants I've used in the past do. Mando is also designed to be a full body deodorant, so you can put it anywhere, even on your feet, maybe get a second stick for that one. But really, it's not just our armpits that need to be deodorized. If you do want to try America's #1 whole body deodorant formula right now, you can find them in Walmart, Target, and other retailers across the country. And for the best deals, you can go to shopmando.com. Some men mask their BO with sense. Mando men get the job done right. Don't mask it, Mando it. Available in retailers near you, or head to shopmando.com, because for a limited time, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code DaneMoore at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide and free shipping. Again, that's code DaneMoore at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide and free shipping. shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Today's show is also brought to you by Thrive Market. And when we're ordering groceries, we are using Thrive Market membership to get groceries delivered straight to our home. And I love it because it only costs $5 a month. Thrive Market is a membership-based grocery service where you can shop from wherever you are, simply by hopping on their app, and the membership breaks down to just $5 a month, giving members access to weekly sales, personalized shopping, and peace of mind knowing there's no junk in any of the products they carry. Instead of paying fees on every grocery delivery order, you pay once for the year and benefit from it every time you shop. And there's no trade-off for good tasting food. The membership gives me access to brands and flavors I've never seen in my local store, but I've discovered a lot of things I like that I hadn't tried before. There's peace of mind in the shopping. You're paying a small monthly fee to offload the stress, research, and decision fatigue of eating healthy, and you can try it risk-free. I pay $5 a month, so I don't have to think about sketchy ingredients every time I shop. And there's no hidden fees. I can spend way more on delivery fees or just pay $5 a month for a Thrive Market membership. I'm using this. I think you should try it out too. If you're ready to make some healthy swaps and become a member, join Thrive Market with my link, thrivemarket.com/DaneMoore for 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. The Ayo acquisition is not one side or the other. And that's why this could help, right? It's the idea that, he's not a 10 out of 10 on offense. He's not a 10 out of 10 on defense, but I think in theory, or my expectation right now, is that he should be pretty much equally helpful on both sides of the ball. And to that end, that seems like a great thing you could use to substitute your way there. And
right. That's a good point.
And Finch didn't have that before either, right? Like
this year,
yes. Like Jalen Clark wasn't that. Rob Dillingham wasn't that. Shannon Jr. wasn't that. And it's much more plausible that Ayo gives you both sides of the floor stability there, which is, we could talk a little bit about the game was such a mess last night that it's hard to focus on what did he look like in his debut. But let's just talk about that, more broadly. You wrote, glowingly about the move and kind of Conley's ingenuity in making that happen. Why? I guess in addition to what I said, you agreed with, like, why will this be a good thing for the group?
I think one thing is that they just need two-way players because of exactly what you just said, is that it's been this year. It's like, do we put in the guy who helps us on offense and maybe kind of crushes us on defense? Do we put in the opposite? Like, what are we picking between? And like I said, they often veer offense in that way anyway, but ideally what you want in your roster, this is all the rage like 5 to 10 years ago, right? Like, how do we get two-way players? And there's been less discussion about it, certainly, but Minnesota's roster is kind of pretty limited on that front. Like, it's Jaden McDaniels, the way that they've been playing these guys, like Ant theoretically is, but doesn't look like one most of the time that he's out there, especially in the regular season. Like, it's pretty much Jaden, maybe some Dante some nights. Like, But there aren't like guys that you can count on to be impactful or at least positives on both ends of the court. Jaden is one, and Ayo looks like one, like to the degree, not to like a Jaden degree, like he's not that good of a player, but a guy where you can go, I think we need more defense here, but I don't want to crush our offense. Okay, Ayo. Like that to me, having those types of levers. So like you said, maybe they can. And that now, if you give them a piece, I think when you're building a team, if you don't give your coach the pieces to make some of these moves, then it's tough to be like, oh, well, I blame them for that. Now, I think if you give them like an IO and it's like, okay, let's see some more lineup versatility here, especially if our status quo looks like we're banging our head against the wall. Right. Let's see it now. And I think that this just gives them another guy where they can be like, oh, okay, Ant's playing poor defensively, so we want to pull him out for 3 minutes. Like, okay, here's a guy who will not crush our offense and will ideally give a better effort on the defense.
Well,
and like just better.
I was talking about the expected value, the opportunity cost of taking Anthony Edwards off the floor for Ayo coming in versus Jalen Clark. Those are just different things. Just, that gap is not as large as it was. I mean, it's still a gap. Certainly, Anthony Edwards is way better offensive player than I have.
Yeah, don't hear what we're not saying here. That's a big one. And also, like, I mean, I just thought as they went into the playoffs, like they needed something closer to a pure seventh guy. Like as much as I like what Bones has brought offensively and what he's tried to do defensively, like there just is more volatility there. We can see that. And Ayo has barely played in the playoffs because the Bulls stink. So I'm not saying that's more of a lock, but I think we all feel just looking at the skill set and what he's brought to Chicago and who he's been throughout his career, that it's more likely that he slots in as a playoff player that you can trust to play 20 minutes in a playoff game and not kill you and maybe help you, maybe make a couple big shots and fit into the specific game plans you have to have defensively, where it's like, well, he can switch on to this guy and guard this guy. That type of things that you need to do when you're trying to compete against these really good teams who are going to be picking at all of your scabs along the way. What's one less scab you can have? I think it's not like a proven concept, but I think Ayo is going to patch up or like make some weaknesses a little bit stronger, which I just think they needed. I think if you don't roll into the playoffs with 7, your 8, your 9, your 10 can be suspect. We've seen that. That's the roster building in the NBA. But man, I think they needed to feel better about their top 7. And I think Ayo pushes them farther in that direction. If he produces at the level that I think I think a lot of us assume that he eventually will.
I do. And the reason I do think he'll deliver what we're expecting is because he's not great at anything. Like, and even the 45% from 3 will suggest that he's a great shooter. It's not a great shooter. He's a great open 3-point shooter. It's a completely different version of 3-point. And we'll see this and we'll learn this with him. You'll learn that he takes very different threes than Dante DiVincenzo takes. That's just, he's different, but he's quick to, like Nikhil, quick to take an open 3-point shot. There's not going to be hesitation there at all. He's also going to be a missile to the rim. Like when he has attacking space doing that, like, okay, cool. There's 2 things that you can eject in here. He moves the ball well side to side, not as a primary initiator, but he's going to be one of those 0.5 guys. He is. He's going to have the ball in his hands, and his first thing on the catch is he's going to look, is there space for me to attack? Is there an open 3 for me to take? Okay, if it kind of like Nas that way, where it's like, okay, no, let's go. Like, here's the handoff, or let's interchange here. Like he's going to be quick. Those are all things. It's a little bit more of another guy who can attack the rim, another guy who can hit a 3, another guy who can get your offense into quick decision making, early offense. A little bit of that, even if he's not great at any of those things, that's going to matter. And then he's a versatile defender as well. Not huge, but strong. So you could primary match him up with a lot of different guys. And if he gets caught in a switch and he's on a strong 6'8" guy, kind of like Jalen Clark would, like he's sturdy, he's going to be able to fight in that position in a way that Bones Highland wouldn't be able to do. And I think more than anything, he's going to be a player who gives you effort on that side of the floor. So there's just a bunch of little things that he's going to do. And when I watch this team play, and when I'm specifically looking for the issues that the bench has had, is there's been times where Finch would have obviously chose a guy who could do X, Y, or Z, and he has not had those options. Ayo is a versatile weapon, if not a powerful one. And that, like, I commend them for going to get that, because I think given the limit of their assets, that was the best thing that they could get here without obviously completely distorting the roster and making some sort of gigantic trade for somebody. I think for an alternative move, I love the archetype of player because I think it fills so much of what this team doesn't consistently have.
I mean, we've talked about this before privately, but I really think like it's more of a prime version. I think even maybe like the guy before he came to Minnesota, but like a prime Taurean Prince, where you're like, is he a great defensive player? No. Is he a good one? Yeah, he's good. You don't feel bad when he's matched up there. Like Ayo is a little bit smaller, probably a little bit better on the handle, but pretty similar, I think, in a lot of ways of like, he could shoot it. He can do this. Yeah. He can play off the catch. He can defend. Like, we can feel good about him switching on anybody, and we're not like, oh, we're beat on this possession. And it's just nice when so many times this year where they would put out lineups out of a timeout, and you would either go, A, how is this group going to score? Or B, they're not going to stop anybody. And it's another guy where you can go out there and go, well, there's some defense and some offense. So it's just a piece that you don't have to be like, these three guys can't play together because we can't do one or the other side of the court. It's another guy where it just opens up the entire picture because it's like, well, he can play with theoretically everybody, and it rounds out the lineup one way or the other. And they just needed more of that. They had a lot of it last year, and just because of literally one piece, which is crazy. But like, you see how much that made a lot of combinations make more sense. Because you could put Nickeil Alexander-Walker into it. And I'm not saying Ayo is Nickeil. Nickeil has probably earned something where it's like Ayo has to prove he can be that. But it's at least somebody who can check those boxes. Now we just see if it's to the same degree.
Yeah, it's like you could at least shade them in.
Yeah, you know? Right. You know, like, yeah, right.
What did you think of the price to get him?
I thought the price was fine. Like these seconds, I get it. Like, I get that seconds are assets, and largely they're assets where like people just seem to like throwing them in. Like, the higher you can get it, it feels like another second makes it so a team's like, okay, we'll do that, you know, because they feel like they won a bargain or something. So if you don't have any, like the Wolves are getting like that cupboard's getting pretty bare, you know, like that makes it really hard to ever feel like you're giving somebody that something extra to probably get a deal done, you know, like, oh, they're like on the line. Oh, we'll throw in this extra second. Oh, okay. Now we feel good about it. But in general of value, when I watched Minnesota just trade down the board when they had like the first pick of the second round, I lost all respect for what those actually are as draft assets, you know, like it's, oh, this player, that'd be good. Oh, well, never mind. Okay. Nothing wrong with Rocco Zakarski. Might be a great player, but like, who knows where you could have got him in that draft anyway. So like, the actual asset of it, I think of it just as a trade asset. I see like one is in this draft coming up here. So that probably wasn't going to be a future trade asset. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's going to be in the 50s anyway.
Good point.
So it's probably more like 3 second-round picks. And at that point, it's like, if you have a guy who, assuming all goes well, you can actually keep as part of your core even moving forward, that might just be it for this team. Like, yeah, until they decide that this version of this roster isn't good enough, you do just kind of roll forward with what you have. And an addition of Ayo to what you have might make sense until they maybe hit a point where they're like, this isn't going to do it, this group. But it gives this group more sustainability, I think, if they decide to roll forward with it.
I think Conley talked about this a little bit with seconds. He talked about the most value they have is on draft night when you want to move up like 2 or 3 spots and like to get the guy that you like at 23 that you like a lot more than the guy you think is going to be there at 26. You know, that's I think like the most functional value for a front office, but there is still value in seconds in this. You throw a pile of them at somebody. And that's what the Wolves did. When you could get a guy, and there's historical examples of this. If you throw 4+ seconds, like you can go get a bench piece at the deadline. Like, I thought the Ayo trade was a good example of what the value of seconds are right now. And you know, in the Chicago side, if I was a Bulls fan or something like, but for them, now I think they got like 15 seconds or whatever.
They literally got more than 10. Yes. I don't know the exact number, but it's more than 10.
Which sounds stupid from like how many players you're going to draft here. But what they will be able to do at some point is offer 5 seconds in a trade with a young player and go get something. You know, it's the Daryl Morey line, 2nd-round picks or cigarettes in jail. Like it is a currency. and it has some value to some people. And with enough of them, you can go get something a little bit bigger when there's a lot of them there. The other part of it, and Britt and I talked about this some too, is like the price wasn't only the seconds. The price was Dillingham, and the price that they paid for Dillingham was a lot too. So if you look at it in that way, obviously the 2031 pick and all of that, it's not a, if you look at it over the course of 2 years, it looks like you paid a lot for Ayo, but the price of the value of Rob Dillingham dropped so drastically over the past 18 months, self-inflicted on the Wolves' part, at least to some extent. But to some extent, Rob hasn't been as good as the 8th overall pick was, so it's not totally fair to attribute it to that either. But at the same time, I think it'll be one of those things where if this doesn't work out a couple years from now, we go, okay, they did draft Rob and they gave up all of this draft capital. They didn't resign Nikhil because it was going to put them too far into the second apron. And then they had to go trade Rob and everything else that they had to go get a guy that they felt could fill the Nikhil role. If you look at it in that vein, like that's not a good picture. But that wasn't how the chessboard was laid out last Thursday. It's
so step by step.
Yep.
It's you're in each one is a different situation. I will say it's interesting now. We talked about this way back when they traded Rudy Gobert. Of like that's a lot of assets, and like it doesn't put you in total jail, but then it makes it where you have to get everything else right from there because you are, you don't have many bullets left in the chamber there to take your shots. And Rob was a shot and it missed. And then you see like, oh wait, we don't even have future first to trade here. We're pretty much got what we got. And that was the whole thing of like, okay, but when Ant gets into his prime, and I would even say now, like he's been in the league for so long that you can say this is pretty close to a prime. Obviously you'll still take, it's just going to be a longer prime. I think like you could say 24 to 32 can be prime or whatever. And it's like, okay, how many moves do you have left to make to continue to improve the roster as you go through all of this? And then you go, okay, well, there are less and less assets here. So it's interesting now. You almost start to see it like, oh, we don't have any future firsts. We created a lot of them in that Rudy trade. And then we missed the one shot we took.
Your wallet feels it down the line.
Yeah, and it's like you could say it was worth it, and I still think I'm not saying it wasn't worth it. Like they've had so much success here, they might have success again. Who knows? Maybe they'll win an NBA championship this year. Rudy's been a big part of all the success, but you do see the flip side of it. This is kind of like the first glimpse into that of like, oh yeah, there aren't a whole lot of assets here left to work with, and especially if they do decide that this roster needs like a retooling, they're going to have less assets to try to make it an immediate positive retool. So that's going to be interesting to watch.
I think it probably prevents a retool, man.
Sure.
Like,
you keep rolling forward with what you got.
Yeah.
Like, so it's either a big swing, like it is like a big superstar, like a Giannis or whatever without much, with really having to be amazing on the margins, or it is rolling with what you got. And that's why like an Ayo where you can go, well, we supplemented what we have at least. And you can carry that forward if you do choose to, come to a new deal this summer to keep him here long term. That's why that made sense. But it was just like a really interesting glimpse into like, oh yeah, it does matter having these picks that you traded out far out, because you can't just keep trading more.
And it's why this move has to work. That you did empty the little that you had left to go get a player who we just talked about agreeing with the idea of the fit and the price at that time. You got to re-sign him, and he's got to be a huge part of the future. Like that's this trade being justified, this team continuing on the path that they're on. It's hard to continue on the path that you're on when you've been competitive for years, as the Wolves now have been competitive for years, so it's just, I don't know. It was a lot of commitment to Rob Dillingham, and it was a bit of like a all-in move, but now it really kind of is, all in within the construct of this team. And this can't flame out. And I don't think it will. If it does flame out, it's going to really, really hurt. If Ayo can't be what it is, or if he goes sign somewhere else, this offseason and proves to just be a rental, which I think is very unlikely, but you can't miss this one, that's just where this team is at right now. They gave the end of what they could give to improve the roster on the margins. And I think there was a glaring hole on this team. And in my opinion, it's exactly the shape of Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah.
The stuff at the top of the roster, as we talked about for the first 40 minutes of the episode, like there's holes up there too.
And if those
like
don't get fixed, nothing else matters. We get that. But if those things do fix, like you have to pay the respect almost of what this group has done to go, if those guys figure it out as they have in the past, you have to give them the best chance with like the end of the rotation here too, or end of a playoff rotation more specifically. And, you know, like I said, like, I think it's important to lay out the stakes as we just did. But just to reiterate, we both think it was a good move. Like we both think it was the right decision because you kind of owe it to this group. And if not now, when with a lot of this, with this group, frankly, like this current one right here. So that, and even in like the West, you know, like when are the Spurs going to be more gettable than this? Probably not. You know, the Thunder are trying to repeat. You're seeing the injury stuff with that. Denver, we're seeing the injury stuff. Like, these teams that you think are going to be good for the long term, A, you never know, but B, this might be the most, you know, gettable the West is in general because there are so many question marks next to everybody. So if you don't take a swing now, I do feel like you're kind of selling yourself short. And you would be like, what if?
And there's such a goofy team, and in a way, a good team where like they still got a lot of power in the batting box with that swing, right?
Yeah.
Like there is like all this energy stuff is true and problematic in many ways, but if I'm the Houston Rockets in the first round, I do not want to play the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Right.
I don't. Right. I wouldn't if I was any of those teams because there's a level that this gets to that would be silly for us to ignore. I kind of brushed over the Thunder win in the midst of the other funky 5 games, but like the Thunder game happened, and that wasn't that was a blip over the last couple of weeks. It's not a blip of who this team is. Like this team can beat really, really good teams. And so if you're Tim Conley, if you're Chris Finch, I get being like, gotta keep that light on. And Ayo or the fire going, and Ayo's another, you know, kindling to throw in there.
If I was the Wolves, I wouldn't want to play the Wolves in the first round for sure. Like, hey, okay, you're going to get this team's best shot. And like, they maybe haven't shown the ability to consistently do it over a month and a half or whatever, but like they can definitely do it for 2 weeks. And we don't want to be the first 2 weeks to play them because that is truly probably Minnesota's best shot as we've seen now for a couple different playoff runs. I totally agree. It's an interesting thing with the Wolves. Like people always talk, you know, it's the journey or the destination or whatever. It's like, it's the destination for them because the journey often like is super bumpy and not that enjoyable. And I get it that every NBA team has stretches like this, but those teams are often more injured than the Wolves ever are. Like the Wolves are this healthy team that's taking these same dips that these other teams that are all hurt are taking. It's like, oh, who's up for the Wolves? It's like nobody. They're just, this is just what they do. It's the journey is even on their faces often looks very unenjoyable for stretches of the season. But you know, the destination at the end sometimes does make it feel like it was worth it all along.
Yeah. He's Jace Frederick. You guys can read him over at the Pioneer Press. Follow everything he does at Jace Frederick. He's here with me every Monday to talk about whatever the hell's going on with this team. See you tonight, man. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, always fun, man.
Next up will be Chris Hine and I on Tuesday morning. The Wolves play the Hawks Monday night. We'll see what goes down tonight as the real Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going to be back. the old Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the new, he'll be here. The Wolves will play the Hawks. We'll talk about whatever happens in that game. But until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd.